Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast are of the presenters and the presenters only and do not represent the views, opinions, or strategies of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Please like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 119. We're going to go over the tentative agreement a little bit, and we'll go over some other stuff, and we have a special guest host with us tonight. So it's all been interesting tonight, I think it's going to be. How was your week, James?
Spent the week training my new sub. I spent the first 4 days of the week training her, and it was as if she'd done this before. She is that good of a sub. She was sorting the mail. I mean, the casing part was the hardest part for her, finding the addresses in the case. But once we got out on the route, it was almost second nature for her. She was flying through the route on the fourth day, and of course I'm riding in the back and getting car sick. Plus it was 85 degrees out, so really warm in the back of that truck with no ventilation, and I ended up getting car sick and took Friday off because I almost couldn't walk to my car out of the office after that. I do not do well riding in vehicles, but training the next generation carriers is more important than my car sickness. But she seems to be a keeper. She seems to be doing a great job at it. So I'm glad I took the time to spend with her. And that's what we need to do is train our next generation carriers to be future regular carriers. But other than that, it's been a pretty quiet week overall. Nothing to really report other than the tentative agreement stuff. So we'll get into that later. How was your week, Bill?
Oh, it's just so wonderful in retirement land here. Answering calls, texts, and IMs from people, and it's amazing how you cannot actually make this stuff up, and it goes on across the country in regards to management. The red line rule, I love that one. That came up 3 times this week. Red line rule for carriers returning from their routes. It's like, okay. This is not a rural carrier application here. No. Management wants to do it. Okay, no, just let them do it. File a grievance. Shortage of carriers. Of course, the TA was a hot topic of discussion, and the fact that they wanted to continue on with these adjustments and creating new routes when they don't have carriers for the routes, let alone vehicles for the existing routes they have in several offices that I'm aware of. So just another normal day at the post office, folks. I mean, just can't make this shit up. How about you, Kristen? Where are you going otherwise?
Oh, well, I will let our guest host speak real quick if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, so my week was good. I was off on Monday, thankfully, but they had a bunch of influx of parcels that they got that they hadn't thrown on Saturday. So the sub that was on my route actually was out there until 8:30 with 2 other people helping him. My route's a 46K, so but other than that, I mean, it's just been me just researching stuff about the TA and kind of going down a bunch of different rabbit holes and looking at all the comments online and doing my route in the meantime and talking with some of the people in my office. They're adjusting 2 of the 48Ks in my route or in my office that have been overburdened since RX began. And so there's a little bit of chaos going on with that. And one of the guys is not currently in the office that's being adjusted. Yes, thank you, dude. And so it's just been a little little chaotic with that, and people just confused and upset, and and then with the contract, and then people talking to me about different conferences and stuff. So, but yeah, how was your week, Kristen?
It wasn't too bad. We've been dealing with a sick infant this week, so I did take a day off Wednesday to help out and whatnot. But other than that, it's been a pretty average week for me. I mean, nothing too special at the moment, that's for sure. Ruby ran her route Saturday and did it with an evaluation. The entire route, minus about, I don't know, 8, 10 parcels that couldn't fit in because of the size. That was it. She rocked it out Saturday. So other than that, it's been I did work my K day yesterday. No big deal. Whatever. Seems to be the norm lately, but I heard we have another new RCA in the pipeline, so we'll see who wins the coin toss on training that one. And then, yeah, just getting ready to go to Mid-States coming up next weekend. I'm only going to work Monday and Tuesday this week, so got some family stuff Wednesday. Go watch my youngest daughter's state band festival, and then I'll hit the road, go spend an evening with my parents, and then leave from there Thursday morning down to Mid-States with Ruby and Little Man and our traveling babysitter in tow. So other than that, hasn't been too bad. So, as we all know, there was the tentative agreement that was announced last week. We did our bonus episode Friday. And then now we actually have our, wait, it wasn't Friday. What day was it? What day did we do the bonus episode, guys? Was it Friday last week?
I believe it was Friday.
Yeah,
Friday.
that's
Yeah, you guys did
right.
it Friday
'Cause Sunday
night.
was Easter. That's right. It's been a couple weeks since we've had a regular episode. Yeah, I'm brain fried. That's what happens when I work 6 days a week anymore again. Yeah. So we did that last Friday, and they released the PDF version of the tenant agreement with a little bit of explanation on it that will be coming to your mailbox coming soon for all the members of the NRLCA. In there is also a list of the Zoom ratification meetings by date and state and times. And they are still putting up the in-person ratification schedule as they schedule the states. So yes, I did take next weekend off for Mid-States. I'm not sure who else is going. I know James will be there for sure. I'll be there. So yeah. All right, James, how did you want to start stuff off?
So the big thing is we want to stress this is our opinion and our opinion only. It definitely does not express the views, opinions, or strategies of the National Rural Letter Carriers Association because this tentative agreement, as stated on the union website, was a unanimous decision amongst all the board members. Every single person on that board voted yes to accept this tentative agreement. Being with that said, my problem with this tentative agreement will always be the percentage increase to our wages does not match inflation. And any wage increase that is lower than the cost of living that we have and cannot be made up by the cost of living adjustments is a pay cut. You are taking a loss, and these percentages do not match inflation, have not matched inflation. We are making less per dollar now because the dollar is worth less now than it was back even 5 years ago. We are taking a loss in buying power. That is my biggest problem with this. You know, you want to talk about something that hurts carriers. The biggest thing that hurts carriers is having to live in a car, pay for a Planet Fitness membership in order to do your laundry, or to take your showers, do your laundry at a laundromat because you can't afford the cheapest place in the area you live on the wages you are making. There aren't living spaces at the post office. And we're definitely not going to owe the company store our soul because we aren't paid enough to survive. That is one of my biggest problems with this. And this not only affects regular carriers, especially those on table 2, it affects RCAs. These wage increases for RCAs, here, I got you $1 for giving 3 years of service to the post office. What about those carriers that have 4, 5, 6, 10, or like the carrier that went regular in my office just before I did, had 17 years as an RCA and never once saw a wage increase for all those years of service other than the same increase that a carrier who just came in off the street saw. There is a disconnect between what is right for the craft and what is good for the post office. Carriers have been taking loss after loss after loss in wages. We gave money back to the post office to help keep them solvent after they got the pre-funding mandate. We created Table 2 through arbitration. Granted, it was through arbitration, but we negotiated to have Table 2 put in there in the arbitration.
We didn't.
I'm not saying
No, we didn't.
we didn't
They put it in there.
specifically ask for it, but in our negotiations with it, we didn't present a strong enough argument to prevent it either. The thing is, that's saving the post office. At the time it was initiated, it was saving the post office $110,000 over the career of a regular carrier. That number is now creeped closer to $200,000 per carrier. And you got to think how many carriers are on Table 2 right now. How much money has the post office saved with that? And yet they continue to have record deficits in pay. It's time to stop taking the money off the back of the carriers. Okay, I'll
So
get off my
James,
soapbox.
I'm somebody who's still very undecided about this tentative agreement in general. And regardless of how I'm going to vote for it, I'm trying to educate myself on what's included in it, what us as carriers need, and what has happened in the past, and what's been historic. And so that's why I've been going down all these rabbit holes of what have we gained in the other contracts? What have the other unions gained in them? Because I live in a one-income household, and I am on Table 2. And I was lucky enough that I was only an RCA for about 3 years, versus the guy that's across from me was an RCA for 9 years. And, I also have a friend who was hired in 2012, and they postponed her hiring date so that she was on Table 2. And so her opinion on a lot of this with Table 1 and Table 2 matters the most to me because, we're proportionately more affected with only getting portions of that COLA, and that COLA is designed to make it so that it's a little bit more livable, but it's not. And, that's why I try and stay on my growth 46K to make ends meet with that. I work my K-Day to try and work overtime. I try and help the RCAs and get overtime when I can on other routes, and my state's expensive to live in. But how do we as carriers, as union members, and as the national board argue and show the postal service or an arbitrator, this is how much we're owed, when historically the postal service and arbitrators haven't given us much more. I mean, and I went back, so I went back from like 2000, and I know you had sent me that list that had the different contractual raises that were in the 70s. And in the 70s, the contractual raises were a lot more. But so I started going back from 2000, and the APWU got a 1.2% raise, a 1.8% raise, a 1.4% raise, and then they ended up getting cash payments of $499. And then the COLA has been kept. And then the NRLCA, they ended up going to arbitration. And then they got a 1.2% raise, a 1.8%. And then in 2002, each step increased by amount equal to one pay level upgrade, which was provided to the same as the city carriers. And then they got like a $300 raise there, a 1.4, a 1.2, a 1.3, a 1.3, and then a one-time cash payment of $499. And then the NALC, they ratified theirs, and their contract negotiations were affected because of September 11th. And they got 1.8, 1.5, 1.2, 1.3, 1.3, and then in lieu of the COLA for the first year, they would get lump sum payments. And then in 2006, the NALC ratified their contract. They got 1.4, 1.8, 1.9, 1.9, 1.9, 1.85, and then a lump sum of $686. The APWU was dealing with more of automation stuff, so their craft was getting a little bit more affected. And then with the retirement mandate stuff with Congress and whatnot, I think they were the ones mostly affected, so they only got 1.3 and 1.2, and then they ended up going up one more step, and they got the COLA, but that's all they got. And then the NRLCA, they rejected that contract, and they rejected a 1.2, 1.2, 1.2, 1.2%, and then it went to arbitration, and we only got 1.2, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, and then the one-time payment of $686, and then the COLA. So it was the same as the city. And then in 2010, that was like when the NRLCA was arguing about automation, and the mail count and the standards that were affected with it and whatnot. And so the APWU got a 1.0, a 1.5, and a 1.0.
Mm-hmm. So if you go back in our history, there are times where we have had a better argument in arbitration to get those larger increases, whether it was because the other craft got it or because it was more desirable to give that to us. There was actually an arbitration where we lost our 2 COLA payments a year, 2 COLA payment adjustments a year. And that was just for one contract and then was brought back immediately after. But if you look at the history that I had sent you, which shows a lot of the wage increases and COLAs that we got, there are points where we've gotten a 5% upgrade in 2002 of a little over $1,000 on average for all the pay tables. You go back in 99, we had a 2% wage increase. You go back a little further, 1.5, etc. And you go back into the 80s, and yes, you have 5, 3, 2%, but that's right in line with what we're getting at 1.2% now. The same amount on average for each raise. And you said it best right there. Each time we've gone to arbitration, the wage percentage has increased. It didn't decrease. And
Well, and
The
then
only
so then in 2010, the APW ratified their contract and they got 1.0, 1.5, and 1.0, and that's when they agreed to Table 2 and screwed everybody else. And I learned that from the national board. That wasn't that I didn't know that for a long time because everybody gets pissed at the union because they think we agreed to Table 2 when we went to arbitration and we ended up getting Table 2, the engineered study, and we got 1.0, 1.5, and 1.0. And then the NALC also went to arbitration and they got 1.0, 1.5, and 1.0. And then from that point forward, since 2010 and all the things that have happened since then, the contracts have been pattern bargaining. And I'm not saying that I don't think that each of the unions are going in there and they're arguing the same takes because we all have different things to argue with. With the Postal Service, we have RX, we have different we don't have penalty overtime and different rules and stuff that the city side has, but if you go back in and you read these arbitration awards, the arbitrators specifically state that they look at what these other crafts have gotten and they compare it, and the goal essentially is our attorneys and the union arguing enough to push the Postal Service and the arbitrator to show that we deserve more. And I think that we do, but we just all have to consciously think about, if we go to arbitration, I know that, James, I know that I have my own personal qualms with the national board and things in this union and stuff, but ultimately, we all have to be supportive of them. Because they are voicing our concerns, and this is the time where
whoa. No,
hey, I was there.
Stop right there. I've been listening to you rattle off the percentages and everything, and the Table 2 being forced upon us by the arbitrator, which was set up by the APW. It was then given to the city carriers, and then it got forced on us. James, you said it right when you opened up and said this board unanimously voted to accept this TA. Now, a gentleman put on in one of the rural platforms today about collective bargaining from our national magazine, September 2024, where Don Matson announces that we opened collective bargaining. Here's what I want you to think about. It's in my opening, Don Matson says, I outlined the need for higher wages for all carriers, especially for the non-career workforce, who need substantially higher starting wages, the need to eliminate the lower wage tiers, and a faster path to career or credible service. Now, I don't want to hear jack shit from nobody because none of these issues were addressed. This is his opening statement, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody on that national board unanimously voted to put forth this TA for us to swallow, okay? I don't want to hear no shit about supporting a board who's making almost $200,000 a year. And if you're one of the 5 national board members living in a $800,000 plus house for free, as well as traveling around the damn country on our freaking dime with your freaking spouse, while you're doubling the income that we make. So don't tell me about supporting. You're entitled to your opinion, but please don't shove no bullshit down my throat and say, oh, they have our interests at heart. They do not. All right, back to you, Meow.
And to double down on that, you have to remember at the regional conferences after the city tentative agreement was reached, before the vote was ratified on it, Don Masson was quoted as saying, RCAs deserve more than 50 cents an hour raise. He got them 5 cents more.
Well, and I mean, let's I'll just say this to both of you guys and Kristen too. Like, what do you think the RCA starting wage should be? What do you
$25.
personally $25?
$25.
Somewhere between 25 and 30.
And what do you
Because
think that the table one or the end of the table, what do you think as a regular carrier that we should be aiming towards? And what
6
percentage
figures.
that they should be aiming towards in there?
6 figures. I think by the end of this contract, at the end of this contract, I think that the percentages should add up to at least 9%. Because that is how far behind we are on inflation. I'm not asking for the full inflation on this because that's not realistic. That's not realistic. It's not going to happen even in arbitration. But we can get closer. And the reason why I say that is there are laws in place. And you can have lawyers left and right arguing what the law actually means because of how vague it is. But there is a law on the books under Title 39 that postal service workers shall be paid comparable to the private sector. Now let me finish the argument out here. The private sector they're talking about in that is comparable to the private sector. So you got to use the word comparable to the private sector, which means we have to compare it to something that's similar to what we do. The closest thing we have similar is UPS, FedEx, Amazon, DHL, your parcel delivery services. And if you look at the Delivering for America plan and the comments by Don Maston himself, he says we're becoming a parcel delivery service. So there's your correlation. That's your in. That's how you talk to the arbitrator. The law in the books is we have to be comparable. So you take those companies and you look at what they're paying their employees. You have to exclude the non-union companies on the basis that they aren't comparable because they have a different style workforce than we do. So the only company we can compare to is UPS.
Well, and as Mr. Johnson just said in there too, I actually looked up today how much UPS starts out at it here in like a mile from my house, and it's $21 an hour. And you know, as Mr. Johnson said in there, there's the arbitrator's award for the city side, and he stated that UPS is not comparable. So how do we encourage our lawyers, our board, to if this TA goes to, if our contract goes to arbitration, how do we argue to get more than what the city side got? Essentially, I mean, that's the bottom line on this, because it's identical to that. And do we give up the RCAs that have worked for more than 3 years, earning $1 more? And do we give up I know that it's not much, but the 30 weeks that was taken off of table 2 here? How does one arbitrator look at another arbitrator's decision and the other arbitrators from years past and go against the grain and give one craft more than another? And what do we give up as a result of that too? Because I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with both of you guys that we deserve way more than what this is, but how do we constructively all come together and, you know, get everybody on that page, get the post office on that page, get the arbitrator on that page?
Well, see, this is one of the biggest questions I've had over the years, and Don has preached the fact that we have hired lawyers, we have hired skilled labor negotiators, we've hired all these contract people to assist in negotiating the contract. Well, you spent all this money doing this, and yet we got the same damn thing the city carriers did, basically. So, where's your negotiating skills here, Don? Because you hired all these people to assist you. Didn't you listen to them, or didn't they give you anything good to present to the post office? In 2000, when they were talking about all the automation with the FSS machines and everything, at that time, we as carriers already knew that the volume of flats were going down and that these machines wouldn't be needed the next 10 years or so. Yet, they turned around and they changed all the dynamics that are utilized in determining the value of throwing flats, because now the machine's going to run them for you. And I still to this day couldn't figure it out. It's like, well, how the hell am I supposed to throw 83 flats a minute on an FSS machine? Especially if you're in a POV and didn't have a good tray system set up, okay? Because, you got exempted from that. You were allowed to case it and all. But for the fact of the matter, the little yellow trays that didn't fit in, you had to restock them into hard trays. The automation just jumped the numbers up. And when they went up, so did the numbers went up, but the value for each one went down. And they turned around, and there was a correlation for the decreased value of DPS. The point now that you're in the 80s, and nobody's throwing. That's why most people are taking it to the street, just casing up their raw mail. But all the things they've done to save a buck on our back, and even with when they got the Postal Reform Act done and took that $75 billion monkey off our backs for pre-funding people into the future who weren't even born yet. I mean, it just, every time you turn around, it's off our backs, out of our pockets, and yet management. Who is it posted up there? They had something like 22% pay increase in 2 years. 22%? Are you kidding me? I'd love to see 10%, but we're not even getting 6% over 3 years.
Well, and they're in offices now trying to make themselves look useful because Doge is watching all of the things that they do. So they're trying to justify that increase when truly, I mean, the carriers are the ones who deserve it. We're the ones out there delivering in the rain, snow, sleet, and shine.
And like somebody posted up that we do a different job than UPS. That's right, James. We do a different job because we're held to higher standards in regards to protecting the integrity of the mail. We're held to higher standards in regards to stopping at every mailbox, doing it right every day. And we're doing a lot more than what UPS does. Grab the package, run up the door, drop it off. Okay. We are responsible for a lot more duties than UPS. So therefore, we should be getting paid more than UPS.
That was the exact argument I was going to make, but you made it for me, Bill.
I'm so happy to assist.
That's how you have to arrange it, and you have to, if management will open the door for you in arbitration, they'll open the door for you to try and lower the wages on carriers when they say, oh, we haven't made a profit, blah blah blah. Fine, if you haven't made a profit, give us the books, show us the money, show us everything you've spent money on. Because I can guarantee you 60% of that loss of the post office is on management alone. 20% of that loss is in grievance remedies. And none of it is in the salaries of carriers. None of it is in the salaries of mail handlers and clerks. None of it's in the salaries of VMF. Hell, none of it's in the parts to repair the LLVs. Comparatively, it's all in the extra expenses they're spending for management. So if they open that up and say, hey, we're not making a profit here, show us in the arbitrator the book. We want to see where we can help you save money. Now you've opened the arbitrator up to be able to actually help them do that as well. And your comment about having to listen to other arbitrators, they can take them under advisement. That is what happens in arbitration. Every time you put an arbitrator's ruling in front of an arbitrator, it is an advisement. This is what your learned colleague said. It's the same thing when you take an argument to a appeals court, a federal appeals court. They cover jurisdictions. And in terms of the appeals courts, even numbered jurisdictions usually match each other, and odd numbered jurisdictions match each other. You can take an odd numbered jurisdiction ruling to an even numbered jurisdiction and say your learned colleagues have said this, but they don't have to apply it. And the same thing is true with arbitrators. They can take it under advisement, they could quote it, they could use it, and they could agree with it. But every arbitration you go into, when you start out, you have a 50-50 chance of winning. But 90% of your chance of winning is how you prepare in the first place.
Yep.
Well, and when I read the arbitrator decision for the city side, I was so disappointed. And I mean, they rushed it. It was Renfro just selling the city side out to dry, it seemed like he went rogue and not with the board. I mean, and I don't think that our board's going to do that, but I think that arbitrator's decision has screwed the rest of us now. And it was supposed to be historic. It was supposed to be good for all of us. I mean, we all heard Renfro talk at our convention, but, and then the other thing you have to think about is, in the meantime, while we're waiting for us to either ratify it or for us to go to arbitration, what are our brothers and sisters of the craft, what are we losing in the meantime? And do we only gain, 0.2% like the city side did? I mean, what's the cost of that all? I mean, and we're not in a very pro-labor time in our country. And I wish that it was under better circumstances. I wish the city side wouldn't have taken as long as it did. But the upheaval of all of these top people inside of the post office retiring, DeJoy being gone, there's just a lot of the stuff with the NLRB, the stuff with MSPB, the stuff with EEO. How does all of that affect this? And if we don't build back up our defenses against that, we could be having this conversation when there could be nothing, and the loomingness of privatization and the benefits that that we have are all at risk.
All right, let me go on that one. So the very first thing you said was in this current time. The thing about it was, we were in a pro-labor arena when Citi started their negotiations. We still had the ability to get a very good contract when we entered negotiation. We could have gotten a strong pro-labor contract before any of this stuff hit the fan. It's only been just over 100 days under the current administration. It's been longer than that we've been negotiating for a contract. Now, some people can say, one side or the other on that, but you had the ability to make a difference right then and there. When our contract expired and you hadn't made movements in a way that was positive for the craft, back then you should have gone to arbitration. Back when pro-labor was the thing, we should have gone to arbitration. City carriers should have gone to arbitration back then. Because I can guarantee you, under a pro-labor government, pro-labor NLRB, pro-labor MSPB and pro-labor in a lot of arbitration cases at that time, there could have been a significant increase for carriers. There could have been significant changes for the better for the craft. But the problem is these folks drug their heels. Renfro drug his heels out, and with their negotiations going on, he may have fooled our guys and said, hey, we're going to have an agreement here shortly, so just don't put anything out yet that might hurt our historic agreement that we're working on. But at the same time, you have to be at the top thinking of your craft first and only. The city carrier brothers and sisters, we'll work with them. We'll negotiate with them if we need to on things. But at the end of the day, your craft is who you represent. And we should have been making the move right then and there and tried to work for a better TA right off the bat. The biggest problem is they sign a non-disclosure agreement at the beginning of these negotiations. And while it protects us slightly, it's supposed to be management doesn't release details of the negotiations, and we don't release details of the negotiations. It harms the craft and being able to mobilize to stand up for injustices that management's doing, like when Maston told us that he had taken 3 separate proposals to management and they just threw them out. Didn't even bother sending a rebuttal negotiation back to the union. They just threw them out. And our president turned around, kowtowed, and sent another one with concessions in it. How is that negotiating? When the other side's not willing to negotiate with you, and you're sending them a watered-down packet of information because they rejected the one and threw it out before, and then throw 2 more out after that. What are we supposed to do?
When did that happen?
What happened?
He said
When
that.
did he say that? I've been trying to follow really closely if
What?
every step of it, and I know that it's all been waiting on the city side because we didn't want to jump the gun and go ahead of city, and if city got more than we did, and then we had settled. How pissed would we be at that too, but I just don't remember when Don had said he presented them with something and they just threw it out.
It was in one of his off-the-cuff remarks at SAC. If you remember, I pointed that out in a previous episode of United We Scan. He said that he had presented a tentative contract to management, and they just threw it in the bin. So he presented 2 more to them, which also ended up in the bin.
Also remember, James, when they came up with that agreement in regards to what the hell was that? They presented it, gave them 3, and they chose the 3rd one because it was the least negative. Oh, damn.
The MOU.
John Adam.
The MOU.
The MOU, yes.
For
MOU too.
adjustments.
Yeah.
They had 3 versions, and the one they selected was the least offensive to the
Least
craft.
damaging to the craft. Least damaging to the craft. Even though it was still majorly damaging to the craft.
It's like, hold it. If it's damaging whatsoever, it should never be agreed to.
If one carrier is harmed, we're all harmed. And I also will say that MOU, that was, I believe, in the history of the NRLCA, that was the first time carriers had to pay back management for management's mistake.
Yep. all these engineers, all this data collection, all these AI, computations, and you couldn't figure out that this was going to happen. It wasn't like trying to predict the future in regards to, how many children you're going to have, how long you'll live, or will you be happily married or anything. No, this was all data points that had a predictive future. And they couldn't see that coming, even though they have all the information, and we're still in the dark.
We predicted it.
Yeah,
We knew that people were going to go back up right after they got their evaluations, because guess what? We're paid based on the past 52 weeks, unless you're under the MOU. What you did the past 52 weeks is what you get paid for the next 6 months.
And then they
unless
threw it
you're
out
under
the
the MOU.
window. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you don't get actually paid fair wages for fair work under this MOU.
Or do you get paid for anything more than 57.36 hours on a 48K?
And I believe that if they take the information they have, we have informed delivery that's now showing the magazines that are coming to you that day. Like, they have all the data for every single mailbox in the United States of America. Every single address that gets mail has information to it. How can you not know the volume factor of each specific box as you move it?
Yeah, but do they have the server capacity? Because, I mean, I know Ken Miracle's the one that said that it can only hold like 13 weeks worth of data, and then they have to like consolidate it. I think that's what he said. That, so if we're keeping, sorry, I shouldn't say we, if the Postal Service is keeping that data, what invasion of privacy is that,
They had 12 years to figure out how to store all this data.
They did. Yeah, I agree. It should have been more fleshed out than what it's been.
And according to Ken Miracle, okay, they and Joey Johnson stated their servers were outdated, overloaded, and basically antiques. So how are you going to rely on equipment that's not capable of formulating all this data for years?
Yeah, instead of spending all this money on S&DCs and these parcel sorting machines, why didn't you spend it on servers for this information?
Well, they have that new postal video that go, "We have updated our technology," and I'm like, how long is it going to take for us to get back pay?
Yeah, but the last time they updated technology was called FSS machines that were so big, so expensive, they had to actually build buildings around the damn machines. And they stayed in service for how long? 8 years. You don't update technology for 8 years like that. And then we still had to pay for the machines we didn't even take possession of because the contract was written that way, and we lost in court and had to pay for machines we never took ownership of.
Mm-hmm. The thing for me the most out of all of this is this tentative agreement does not give incentive for people to hire in here. It doesn't give enough pay to get them here because on the way back in Wisconsin, they're hiring at Walmart distribution center for more than what our RCAs make. Same thing in Wyoming. Now, Wyoming, I understand they have the oil boom out there. They're, paying a little bit more for things out there. But still, the RCA out there is currently making $20.38 an hour, when they can make $35 an hour at the Walmart DC. And they don't have to provide their own vehicles. I mean, I don't think Walmart put on their sign that they have to provide their own forklift, safety vest, and pallet jack. But these carriers do. They have to provide a car that is in good condition, able to handle the daily volume of mail, pay for the maintenance on that, the insurance on it, everything for their job, and they're making almost a little over $15 an hour less.
And good luck finding a vehicle that you can just buy cheaply to be able to deliver mail out of without having to do some sort of modification. Now, back in the day, you could. When I first started as an RCA, it was easy to find a sedan with a bench seat, or, I used an '02 Ford Explorer Sport 2-door, but I could easily didn't have to move the console out. I could easily put my foot over to the driver to the pedals. The same with my 99 Blazer. You can't find anything like that now at an affordable price that would work. I mean, we were lucky enough to find Ruby's vehicle for $1,500, and it actually runs. But then I wasn't able to put the free set of pedals into it because it didn't work. So I had to spend another $715 on the proper pedals to get it to work. So now we're already $2,200 in just so she could start training.
And she can't get the incentive.
No.
Yeah, I bit off of I used to be on a POV route that went 70 miles, and I bit off of it when I was pregnant because I was putting more into it than I was getting in EMA, and I couldn't find a vehicle that was going to be, to make it worth it. And I was RCA table 1, or sorry, table 2 going into it, and it just wasn't feasible.
No.
But I just don't know how do we because we can all just pound our fists and be frustrated at the Diet Cola, and everything that's going on with all of this, but how do we collectively come together in agreement and push for it as a union? Because regardless of how you feel about the national board, how you feel about the union, it's all of us. I mean, I've seen all of us on here that are on here right now. We're all collectively doing any bit that we can, and we just all have to come to somewhat of an agreement on, this is what we deserve and this is what we're holding firm on. And what is the Postal Service doing to the national board where it is that 1.4, 1.3, 1.5? What can we do? I mean, there's a lot going on with everything, and it just can't be us slamming our fists down. It may be cathartic for people to write on Facebook and for us to even have these conversations and whatnot, but at the end of the day, what good has come from it? Like, what are we doing constructively right now to push this forward so that we do have better wages, so that we can't strike. I know that's illegal, but and I'm not saying that we should ever do that. We have to be able to do something instead of just slamming our fists and trying to be keyboard warriors on Facebook about all this.
So we currently have a president who is afraid of arbitration. Every time he talks about arbitration and things occurring in arbitration, he always talks about it as a loss to the union. He always talks about how we have a 22% win rate in arbitration. However, I'm not going to mention names, but somebody told me, and they're a reliable source, that they only take things to arbitration they know they're going to win. So if you have a 22% win rate with things you know you're going to win, what the hell are you doing in arbitration? Put somebody else in there. But at the same time, if you're afraid of arbitration, you already are walking in on your back foot. If you already think it's going to be a loss when you walk into arbitration, you're already behind the 8 ball. Every arbitration you walk into, you need to be in the mindset of, I'm going to win. And I will tell you, the people who, and I'm going to get a crap ton of hate mail over this. Rex. Bill, hold your tongue. Rex was an arbitration decision. It was supposed to be a way for carriers to be even more fairly compensated for the work that they actually do. And I do applaud the arbitrator on that ruling. The reason why is that arbitrator specifically said, I'm willing to assist you setting this up and making sure it is fair and equitable. And our union leadership at the time and management agreed to do it together. That means our union management believes management would not climb a tree to lie, but would stand on the ground to tell them the truth. And then we get this abomination of Rex, because we could have had a neutral third party not associated with any of the process assisting us through this whole setup. We could have had Rex earlier. It could have been better prepared. And it could have been actually fair and equitable had people not cowed down. Go ahead, Bill. Lay it on me.
I can't. I can't. Rex to me is one of these things where, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, because what the Rex actually offered was a fair evaluation of our duties, and then it got transmorgified because we had to throw some changes in. Well, okay, that's nice, but where's the transparency? Well, we don't have any transparency. We're fighting the post office for transparency. We're not fighting the. You can't get. You couldn't tell me that 40% of the offices in this country have radar reports and PTR reports up every day. Okay, including mine. We have a weak, steward right now, so you don't have that. You can't tell me that with Rex, with all the data points, like I said, couldn't project misalignment of evaluation after the cuts, after a mini mail survey, and then turn around and ask for money back from people who already have done the work. Are you freaking kidding me? I would have been in jail if they would have gave me a letter of demand or an invoice for back pay for something I've already done after spending 6 years with an over-evaluated route and never getting paid 1 penny over 57.36. The problem of it is, and she points out, Meow's correct. What can we do? Well, you do what we do. We're on a podcast. We're getting people involved. We're trying to educate people. We're trying to assist them in regards to, how to make sure your office is running according to the contract, that you're being treated fairly, that you're not being intimidated, that you're not being retaliated against. This is what we're doing. This is our format. Yes, one person, one vote for the national board. When the national board turns around and unanimously agrees on the MOU in regards to paying the money back and saying that was their best option, there's something wrong with the national board having this mindset of being unanimous. When the national board puts forth a TA that they say they unanimously support, Again, there's something wrong with the mentality of the national board thinking that this is fair and just and represents the best interest of our craft. Or the fact that our president sat there and said, oh, we're going to get substantial increases. Uh-huh. That didn't happen, did it, folks? So here we go. We're going to go to another convention, and you're going to have these old heads back in there again. And, a third of the people there are going to be of the NSS who are emboldened to vote for the current status quo because that's their paycheck. We need to get the national steward system, dissolve it, and put it back in the hands of the states. You can't keep centralizing power in one body. That leads for corruption. That leads for, just overall disdain for the craft because it doesn't matter. As long as they're getting paid, they really don't have your concern at heart, ever. Go
Well,
look at the homes that these people are living in. Look at the $192,000 a year they're earning. And if one of them were ever to say, well, Bill, we have to be paid this much because my spouse gave up their job, to come live with me. Well, no, nobody said your wife had to come live with you or your husband had to come live with you. Nobody said that they had to, give up their jobs at all. We're not responsible for your income in regards to what your spouse may or may not have lost. We're not paying the spouse. We're paying you.
Well, my fiance, he stays home because childcare costs more than what he was making.
What you're earning. Yeah, exactly. And, I've got a son the same way. He's working for Cooper Medical, making $45 an hour as a paramedic. His wife works, as a emergency dispatcher, and they're paying $420 a week for daycare. And it's like, are you kidding? Daycare had to shut down because, they had a kid with, a little fever, and they still had to pay for the 2 days that their kid was fine. So I realize that. Trust me, I worked 6.5 years, 2 full-time jobs, so that my wife could stay home with the kids. I averaged 4.5 hours of sleep a night for 6.5 years. I know the suffering and the pain, okay? But my family was worth it. It was more important for me to have that mother there instilling the values in our children to become the young men that they've become. But not everybody's equipped to do that. Not everybody has a spouse. But why are we paying these people double what carriers make? And providing them
Triple
free
to
housing.
table two.
I was
Triple
just,
to table two.
Housing.
I was just gonna say triple what table 2 makes, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I thought that after, out of the I started listening to you guys when, it was with RX going into effect and everybody freaking out when we were quote unquote wrecked and upset. And I thought that was going to be the moment where the craft stood up and started showing up to meetings and getting more involved. And, if you looked on Facebook, that's how it looked. And, this kind of reminds me of that time, but does that correlate to these people showing up to meetings? And I get it. I know that it's time consuming and whatnot, but I have a 4-year-old kid and I'm involved. I'm still doing it because I want to make sure that I'm taken care of, that my coworkers are taken care of, that the new RCAs that are coming in don't have to deal with the same stuff that I did. And I just don't know what it will take for more people to get involved because are we going to have people actually even voting on this TA? Are people actually going to do it? I mean, the average everyday rural carrier, I know doesn't want to be as invested in all of this too, but they should be able to come in when they can and whatnot. But I mean, what's it going to take?
And
The problem is the problem I have for carriers. The problem I have with the carriers being able to go to these things is a lot of them, firstly, can't afford to. I have an RCA in my office that after they pay all their bills, and they are on an aux out hold down just to make sure they have enough money, and helps out whenever possible to make the extra money, goes home, pays all their bills, pays for their child care, and has $6 left over out of their paycheck. $6 for emergency, $6 for vacation, $6 for anything that comes up. And then you have the times that these meetings are. For instance, my county's meeting is at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday. Now, if you're traveling from the farthest corner of the county to come to that meeting, and our state just changed them over to local units, but it's still considered Oakland County, it's an hour drive down back roads to get there before you can get onto major roads. And some people have 2-3 hours to drive to their local meetings, but they have them on a weekday in the evening, which makes it difficult for those that are on large routes to be able to make them. And then you have these conferences where somebody on table 2 has to get help to be able to go. Thank you, Bill. It's one of those things that, thank you to everybody else that has helped me along the way as well. And it's one of those things that me going to all these conferences like I have, I've incurred a lot of debt doing that. But it's for the betterment of the craft. But there are a lot of people that can't justify paying $130, $150, $200 for a hotel room, let alone the $200.
I'm not just saying these big conferences and whatnot. I mean, I've had meetings with just the RCAs in my office. We just go to the pizza shop and we all just converse and have a face-to-face conversation with one another. I mean, it doesn't just take the forum of us having, a district or an area conference or a state convention. I mean, there is other avenues that we can all be doing, and we're just not doing it. And I don't know what is it that we just feel like we can't? Do we feel like we've been cathartic enough online? But like when I hear these concerns from the carriers in my office, yes, sir, yes, you can. Yep, I bring it to those bigger meetings. It doesn't because I know that not everybody can go. It takes more than just. Yes, it is. It takes more than just these. It can't just be the big ones. And I know, Western States was in Montana and it was a lot more remote to get to for a lot of people. But, next year Western States is in Las Vegas. So is there a lot of people going to show up there because it's cheaper to fly to it? But I just think that we need to get back to the localized meetings that we can all have and voicing concerns there and bringing it to a more official capacity, because just all of us bitching on Facebook is not going to do any good. It's not bringing us together. It's just creating more division, and I have a problem. Let's write a resolution. I mean, who was it that wrote that? They went to their district meeting, and this was the first time that they had ever done resolutions. I want to hear more stories like that going on.
Me too.
And you're right about the bitching and all that, and we do preach against that in regards to, don't just bitch and quit. Stop putting an anonymous post. Get involved, stand up, become a voice, become a leader. That we've had people actually say, I became a steward because of the podcast. And yes, everybody, is entitled to their own opinion, and you need to work together. But the problem of it is that If you don't put forth the effort, like Rex training, if you don't put it in your wallet, if you don't put it in the scanner, it doesn't go in the wallet. The same thing here. If you don't put the effort into learning about the union, the rules and everything, you're not going to get anything back out of it. We have our local meeting coming up next Thursday. I provide food for it. Okay, then we're going to have Olive Garden food there, and you have to respond so I know how to order food and everything. But we are one of the few union chapters, local chapters, that will do this stuff. When I put out the letter for inviting all our members to attend, state secretary says, well, you can't put in there about them being disillusioned, Bill. Why can't I? Well, that's kind of negative connotation. Excuse me, it's the truth. People are disillusioned with the craft, with the union, with the national steward system. When you have an area steward in your office who doesn't do anything, yes, you're a bit disillusioned. When he tells you to go to the supervisor for a grievance form instead of having him readily available for you, yes, you're disillusioned. When you file, an EEO and nothing's done, we actually had the district manager, our SDC, up on EEO charges. And then they turned around and switched the DR, and the DR that took over never pursued them. This is the stuff we're fighting, the apathy. Because what do I get for my union dollar? Well, not much. But we're here every Sunday fighting the same fight, trying to get people involved, trying to educate them. I had a carrier turn around and text me in regards to who to vote for our delegates going to the national convention. I can't recommend that. You need to look at these people and research. And then off to the side, I turn around and say, okay, here's the ones that really represent the craft, because of the fact that I can't put that in any type of traceable communication. But the fact of the matter is, you have to get involved.
Mm-hmm. And we're working with people who started out in life in a time when unions were in turmoil. In the 70s and 80s, unions were big. When we became a global economy, when we started shipping things off overseas and manufacturing in the United States started shutting down, we lost a lot of union jobs. And they were replaced with non-union jobs. And over time, especially after the decision to fire air traffic controllers for striking, and then the corruption within the UAW, Teamsters, and other union organizations, they were painted as a bad dog in the media and through government, all kinds of places. The kids that grew up in our time frame here now don't know what it's like to be in a union household in a lot of places. Don't know what it's like to have that support system of a union. And don't know how to reach out to a union system like ours. That's the biggest problem, is we have a lack of knowledge across this entire craft. People that have 20, 25 years in with the post office don't know who their first contact is as a designated union representative. That's a problem. We have designated union representatives that haven't met the carriers that they're supposed to represent. That's a problem. We don't have union representation in every single office. That's a problem. And I'm not talking about covering the office, in the office. We need to get people to know the union first and know how to voice their concerns to the union. And when they voice those concerns need to be understood. Just like I said at Western States in my speech, listen to understand. That's what our union representatives need to do. And when I talk about voting no on this tentative agreement, that is getting the national board to listen. Whether they listen to respond or listen to understand will be the difference. Whether we vote this up or we don't, it's not going to be the end of the world. If we do vote this out, I don't see us hiring many more people. It's not going to be easy hiring RCAs. It's not going to help the hiring and retention problem. I don't see any extra protections for carriers in there from hostile and toxic management. I don't see a fix where our craft is protected better. These are the problems carriers are facing on a daily basis, and not one of those problems was addressed. That is my problem with this tentative agreement.
Substantially higher starting wages, the need to eliminate lower wage tiers, and a faster path to career or credible service. You got none of that.
And workplace environment was not even addressed.
Or touched at all.
Besides the wages, especially the starting wages, the number one reason for the lack of retention is the workplace environment. The bullshit that we get from management, or the bullshit that we observe by management to another carrier, or especially even newer RCAs that don't know their rights yet, that don't or are afraid to stand up for themselves because they are probationary. To me, the biggest concern is the workplace environment. I think once that can be tackled, and that's just not individual offices. I mean, yes, we have our unicorn offices out there. Thank goodness. I respect those. I used to have unicorn management when I first started, so I know what it's like to work under management that way. I also know what it's like to work with management like I currently do. And it's not right. And we have gone down the grievance road. But it doesn't always fix it. At least not right away. It can take a long, long time. And that's even if it gets addressed by upper management. I think something with the workplace environment needs to come from national to upper management to get these office level managers and their bosses under control. Because when we try to do anything in the office, even if we do have a successful cease and desist, it's still, they find their workarounds so it looks less obvious, but it's still there.
And that was actually addressed too. They said, we can take a grievance to labor and labor will agree with us, but operations will still do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that operations isn't listening to labor? Why isn't management listening to management? That's a problem of management. But that right there alone speaks volumes to the disarray of management in general, and how even when we fight, management's not going to listen to us because they don't care. They'd rather, it's still, like I said before, it's like paying out for recalls by the big auto manufacturers. It's cheaper to do a recall than it is to fix the problem on the line.
Cost analysis. Put it on an actuarial table and say, this is what it's going to cost us to do it now versus later.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing we need to remember: if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. If you don't fight for better, you've already lost. You can fight and lose, but at least you had the wherewithal to step up and fight for what's right.
And as like me always saying with the social media keyboard warriors, I would like to see how many of them are actually active. I know a good majority of them are non-union members. There are quite a few of them that are union members. But how many of them that are members are actually active?
I don't have time for that, but I can post something up in 15 seconds, but I can't go traveling to meetings and this and that, and I really don't want to get involved because I have other things I'm interested in, and shut the fuck up.
Exactly. I mean, how many people came up to us in Reno to say, "Hey, I threw my name in the hat to be a delegate. I'm here as a delegate because of you guys."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I became a delegate. I came because of you guys. How? I mean, I
Well,
can't.
national was like the biggest eye opener too for everything.
It was. I mean, I can't count how many people just that came up to me and told me that. And these same ones, a lot of them. I mean, not all of them, but I know quite a few of them. And even some of them came on their own dime as non-delegates to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know quite a few of them are doing what they can do to come again this year. And that to me.
Don't forget all the people. Don't forget all the people that have rejoined as dues-paying members after they pulled their dues because of the good we're doing on this podcast.
But just to get people involved, that was always my biggest thing, is for people to be involved.
And educated.
Definitely. I mean, I get it can be hard to go to meetings. I understand. I was an RCA for just shy of 9 years. A lot of things that I went to was on my own dime. Did it put me in debt? Absolutely. Did
you have to sleep with a strange man in bed in Florida? Absolutely.
You draw straws on who's bunking with who, it happens. But, it's, there are ways to make it work, but you have to put the work into it to make it work. I'm rather bummed myself that I'm going to miss fall booster. I can make the state board meeting on the day before booster starts, but I won't be able to attend booster. And, that's only going to be the third booster I've missed. And that's because that's, I've already had plans. That's where my trip to Italy is. And I'm actually rather bummed about missing it because I enjoy going. Because even if I always learn something new when I go. It may be a small, minute thing, but it's something maybe, oh, hey, I didn't know that before. Or, oh, okay, that's how that should be interpreted. You do pick...
Or you have somebody ask you a question, and you're like, oh, yeah, I did hear that at this meeting. They said this.
Yes, exactly. I might have a picture of what was up on the screen at the time to show that. Here, let me see if I can find that for you. I mean, I've got... it's stuff like that. And, when you're talking about being active and I love Meow's idea of having meetings with just the RCAs, pick a pizza spot in a night and try and get everybody together. I love that idea. That's something that I am going to talk to my local steward too about trying to get, all of our RCAs in our office we've got 3 that are brand new, as in one hired in just before peak season and actually didn't get trained on his route until after peak season. And then the next one got hired, or that started training right after that one was trained. And then we've got Ruby. So that's 3 in the last 6 months. And then we've got the other two that have been there for just over a year. So they are still relatively new. I have regulars. I am still the only one in my office, with the exception of Ruby now, that goes to the local meetings. I was heartbroken at my most recent meeting that we spent the three board members of us spent for almost a half hour, 45 minutes just trying to get one more person at that meeting so we didn't have to dissolve our local unit. That's all we needed was one. Luckily, we got that one person to save our local unit. We didn't have a quorum otherwise. That's why it's important. Yes, annual meetings are business, but that allows the local membership to see how the business is supposed to work and what goes into it, even if just on the local level. Yes, the state level is quite similar and a lot bigger than national, same thing, but it's all under one umbrella for the most part, and rules and constitutions and policies and stuff are set. So it's a similar process, just on a different scale. People don't understand that. They come to one of those meetings and it's all business and they get bored, or they're just like, well, I didn't learn anything. It was all this, and that. And I understand that. I remember our largest turnout for my local, we were to have a guest speaker. Unfortunately, our guest speaker was over an hour late. Our membership attending after that declined greatly. Like I said, to the point of literally begging people to just show up. Hurry up, please show up so we can do this.
That's what's happened to ours too. Our guest speaker has consistently been late, and I told them, I was like, "There's people who are now. It's embarrassing. It's these people came to talk to them, and I just think that we have to take. I don't know if I want to say take matters into our own hands, but we have to organize ourselves together in these, all of the smaller little groups together. This podcast is an example of that. I mean, even Discord and everything, because I've found a different community with you guys all on here. Yeah. And, I've reached out to different people across the whole country. And what are our we have more that we all have in common than what divides us all, because I was talking with somebody too, that like I could reach out across the whole country, and if I needed something, another rural carrier, another postal worker will help, because we're all together with it all, and I don't like seeing the division. I don't like the division that's going on, and I just think something's got to give, and that's actually why I was like, Kristen, like, hey, I gotta say something, because I know that we deserve more money. I know that, but what is it going to take? And what is it going to take for people to wake up and actually show up? Exactly. And care about their job and care about their future and their money? Because I personally, I like delivering mail. There's days where I get annoyed and pissed off, but like seeing my customers and whatnot, I want to be able to keep doing it and not have to worry financially.
Oh, and I agree. I love my job. Yes, there's days where we walk in that office and we see what we got and we're like, oh, great. Okay, let's do this. But once you get out on that street, and you're interacting with your customers, and you're that's what I love. I come from a customer service background, and so still being able to serve people in a way is what I really love about the job. But at the same time, we are working for the most part independent. But when it comes to the union, we need to be unified. We need to not be divided when it comes to things that affects our jobs directly. we need to stand together, whether that's against management or we stand together in resolutions and taking up issues with our elected officials.
I've seen also,
Yeah.
our union has, when I first started coming to meetings, I had asked the person who kind of got me involved in a lot of it. I said, "Why isn't the union on Facebook?" And she was like, "Oh, they would never do that." And I'm like, "But if you want to reach this younger generation of carriers that are coming on, that's what you have to start doing." And to have come as far as having, whether I critique Don's videos that he puts out on YouTube and laugh just like the Starbucks cups and everything, but I mean, I'm just happy to see something, and I think that we collectively, I mean, it's our union. It's not just the National Boards Union, it's our union, and pushing for them to keep doing better and improving upon that. We just have to keep that momentum going.
And this was a good one that was just put in the listener chat. Said our brothers and sisters are an army. Stewards are munition officers. We can hand every freaking one of them a bazooka, but unless they will pull the trigger in battle, we'll lose the war. And that's true. We can educate and arm every single one of our coworkers, but until they say, "Hey, you did me wrong. This is not how you're supposed to do this. I'm filing a grievance. You didn't do this right," until they're standing up for themselves and then allowing that steward to go in and fight that battle, we're not gonna stop anything. You're not gonna stop anything by just saying, "Oh well, it is what it is." That's not gonna work. I mean, last Saturday was a rough one. I didn't talk about this earlier, but the supervisor did not only one RCA wrong, but two, technically. And I was hot. I was so hot. I spent probably a good 5-10 minutes sitting in my LLV to bring myself back in before I stepped foot in the office when I got back, because I was at that point to where it was a blind rage. And I was mad. Probably some of it was, the actual mama bear part of me coming out. But it to me, it doesn't matter who that RCA or RCAs were that were done dirty. They were done dirty because the supervisor admitted to me after I did eventually go off on her that she had plans and wanted to be gone out of the office by 4:30. I didn't even get back till 5 o'clock. So you're going to do carriers dirty because of your own personal agenda outside of the office. No, that's the type of stuff that needs to stop. Unfortunately, it wasn't something that directed me personally, but yes, the steward was made well aware of what happened that day. And it's bad. I mean, the supervisor started to talk to me something, and I said, "Nope, I can't right now. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to go back to my case, finish my stuff away." I was trying to not do anything. I did not say anything, not open my mouth. I was trying not to. Really, really, really hard. But then they want to turn around and say, "Well, talk to me. Tell me. Tell me. Tell me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Tell me. Tell me." All right, you just flipped the switch. And I don't remember half of what I actually said to them.
You flipped the switch and out came the bitch.
Oh yes. And there was no witnesses in the office when it happened. So yeah, probably a good thing.
Okay, we digress off the TA so much now.
But no, I mean, that's it. It is what it is. I mean, when you see the keyboard
It all connects
warriors,
to it.
it really does in ways. And we're talking, and that was my biggest thing, was the workplace environment not being addressed at all in a TA. And then when you have instances like that happen, and obviously, Stewart took care of what they could take care of at the time, but we can't be divided. I am so tired of seeing the divide. I mean, I see it in our Facebook group. I see it in other Facebook groups. It's exhausting. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
I respect. We all have our own opinions, especially on this TA. I myself do not have a solid yes or no vote for this yet. I don't. And I know some people have that solid no vote. I'm going to respect them for they already have their minds made up. All right, I respect that, regardless if it's yes or no. But don't come after the people that don't have the same insight that you do. Or maybe that they have a different opinion. If it's something you don't like, just keep going past. You don't have to respond and belittle and attack. And I know we went on this before in the past. I've talked about it, so I'm not going to go down that hole right now. But the divide, we need to come together more than keep dividing ourselves. And, that's the biggest downfall on social media and keyboard warriors is division.
Mm-hmm. Fighting amongst ourselves instead of uniting to fight for the greater cause of the craft.
Exactly.
Well, and this isn't the moment to just shit all over the union either, or I'm leaving, and I know that it's up to those people and it's their opinion and whatnot, but at this moment it should be, what is in the contract? How does it affect me? Go to a meeting. When are the meetings? It shouldn't just be negative, 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 negative. It should be constructive and, meeting people where they are, like you said, Kristen.
Mm-hmm. And reading the PDF file that they put on the national website for the tentative for the changes, and reading that and reading the highlighted explanations in red. So actually reading some of that actually clarified some of the things I was questioning when we were going over the highlights, especially with the RCAs and being able to bid on a PTF position once they're out of probation. Probation being 90 work days or 180 calendar days, 6 months. So now you just cut that probation in half. So if you're in one of those offices that all the RCAs are newer,
yeah,
and then a PTF position may open up, now they have a chance to jump in on that. I mean, yes.
Yeah, we actually had it's all in there, but we had an RCA who was ineligible to bid on a PTF position, and then it went district wide. Nobody bid on it, so it came back, and then he was finally able to do it. But in all of that time, he would have actually been, if this TA, what's in the TA would have been present, he actually would have already been a regular. And so there's a lot of situations where they're having issues hiring, and they're constantly filling those PTFs immediately onto routes. And so that's actually one of the biggest benefits in there. But I mean, I know in the red language too, the only thing that I read in the red language that I actually really didn't like was that the 50 weeks would start for the table 2 stuff. It'll be like, it won't be retroactive like the financial parts are. It's like 180 days from that I'm trying to remember it. I don't have it with me right now, but
yeah, and I'm one of those that would be stuck in that 180 days thing because my anniversary's in November.
Yeah, me too. My anniversary would be in December, so I thought that it would be retroactive and that I would get a step increase 2 weeks sooner in the beginning of December instead of the end, and that red language was like, no, you wouldn't. It would be, time would start differently then. So that kind of sucked a little bit, but
yeah, but that's where it's important. Like I said when I opened up the show, when you get that hard copy of the tentative agreement, the changes, take the moment to read through them. Because, there is some explanation in there. If you still have questions, there is Zoom ratification meetings that are going on now that have already started. Look it up.
No, they start at the beginning of next month.
Oh, do they start beginning of next
They
month?
start at the beginning of May.
All right. So
I believe the 1st of May or just after the 1st of May.
okay, so they're starting later this week. Let's put it that way. So, you have that option. If you can't make an in-person ratification meeting, you have an option of a Zoom meeting. So, there are options out there. If you unfortunately can't make either one due to plans that you've already had or scheduling or whatever, I mean, that's understandable. But at least reach out to maybe somebody in your state that did attend one and see if any of those questions could be answered. Or if you do have questions and you know somebody's going to attend one, say, hey, could you ask this question for me? Something like that, so you can get clarification on something that you're still confused on. There are ways of doing that without having to be present for the ratification meeting. I know for our Zoom meeting, as much as I would like to do it, I don't think it's going to be possible for me. But I don't know that at this point in time. I'd have to double check the times and where I'm going to be at. But, all right, guys, we're going on 2 hours nearly. So, we're gonna.
That's a good episode.
I am about an hour and 45 minutes right now. So we are going to wind this down and wrap it up because I do have to work tomorrow and it is Monday.
My nurse came by and told me to get back in my room.
I could believe that. So, Meow, I'm going to start off with you for your final thoughts for this evening.
Oh, wow. Okay. Attend the meetings if you can. Just to kind of reiterate what Kristen was saying, try and educate yourself on how the TA would affect you. I mean, call your DR or your steward if you need help trying to calculate out how much the financial part of it would be, because I think that's a key component. I know a lot of people are complaining about it. Don't just be a keyboard warrior on Facebook. Please attend meetings. Reach out to your coworkers. Look out for one another. And just look out for one another, guys.
James?
Bill?
Or Bill, either one.
I get to go. I get to go. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah.
Go for it, Bill.
Oh, I'm not voting on this because I can't, but the fact of the matter is still being involved. I wish there was more in there, besides the 180 days. I wish there was more in there for the reimbursement for buying the right-hand drive vehicle or the conversion kits, because they represent less than 10% of the cost on most of the equipment. You can't even buy a right-hand drive for under $40,000, can you? Not new, anyway. But the somebody, I won't mention a certain person in North Carolina by name, said, well, we have gains and made no concessions. The gains that we made are concessions because of the fact that they're so minimal, and we deserve more. You deserve more. The RCAs deserve more. Every office that I know is shorthanded. The RCAs are being worked to death, and we got an office. My office is down to 2 PTFs and 2 RCAs, and they're working 6-7 days a week and have 2 vacant routes every day that haven't been posted yet. Again, they have an ADR, an area steward in the office who hasn't turned around and fought for these damn routes to be put up for bid since February 28th. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, let's do your jobs. If you're gonna be a steward, then be a steward and serve your office. If you're gonna be an ADR or a DR, serve the craft. That's what it's about. It's not about not getting off your route. It's not about not having, to do all the mundane things that carriers do for a living. It's about serving the craft. And same thing for the national board. It's about serving the craft. And most of them have used this as a ticket to retirement. I mean, the most blatant and obvious example of this was Clifford Daling when, he proposed a change from, them getting their sub-hire rate, their sick and annual leave, to what their pay rate was as a national officer in dollars. And then people go, wow, they work hard. You know what? Nobody works harder than a rural carrier. And a lot of people are, super efficient, but a lot of you are working over your evaluations and not getting paid for it. And to me, it's a crime. It's fucking theft. And there's no other way to say it. You deserve more. And somebody has said, if you vote against this, you're not going to get anything better. If you vote yes, then you're conceding that the board and the post office are saying this is a fair agreement. So it's a no-win situation. But if you don't speak up, that's your no-win situation. So everybody got a new week starting. Weather's starting to turn nice. Go out there, be safe, be proficient, be professional. Get your asses home to your loved ones, because you are the most important delivery of the day. James?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, Bill. We got a couple of days of severe weather coming up. Tomorrow, well, Monday and Tuesday are looking pretty.
James, hold on. James, not my problem.
You got
Well,
He's retired.
Actually,
I am
between
outside of that
Tuesday
severe
there.
weather, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, but
Go ahead, James.
I had to disagree with Bill a little bit there first. But I have to agree with the points that he made. I also have to agree with points Meow made. Now is the time for everybody, listeners, non-listeners, that are in this craft, to unite together. And I will say a vote for yes on this would be very, very risky to this craft, more so than the risk it would take to go to arbitration. Because in arbitration, they've already got the standard set by the city craft. So that's the minimum that management can offer if we have pattern bargaining. So we're already working from a higher standard in arbitration. Now, granted, they could use the Nolan mediated award as the basis for everything we get, but it was a mediated award. It wasn't an arbitrated award. Management and Renfro went into a mediation with Nolan to create their contract. And Nolan admitted that in his award. So we have to remember that is not an arbitration award, it's a mediated award. So something that is mediated should have gone to the city carriers for a vote. It didn't. We have the opportunity here to vote yes or no on this tentative agreement. I've already given my position. It's not enough to fix the hiring problem, to fix the retention problem, to fix the hostile work environment, the work conditions. The increases in pay do not even cover the increases in our Postal Service health benefit plans for most carriers. So we've got wages, work conditions, and benefits that were not addressed in this tentative agreement. The three major things that our union is supposed to fight for us in these tentative agreements were not fully addressed with it. And we're supposed to believe that this is the best that we can get. I don't know about you. I would rather fight and lose than roll over and just accept what we got. Because I believe wholeheartedly, with the right person arguing in arbitration, we could do better. We deserve better. We need better for this craft to survive. I'm not saying voting yes on this won't allow this craft to survive. We'll survive because we have that dedication to our customers and to this craft. But there are quite a few carriers that won't be able to survive with this tentative agreement. And I support those carriers who are living by a shoestring budget and not even able to provide a real roof over their head. Every single carrier in this craft is affected by this TA, the ones working. We need to remember at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
All right, thank you guys. Now, I may my opinions may be slightly different from everybody else's, which, like I said, to each our own. We're all allowed to have our own opinions. Do I think this TA is wonderful? No. Do I think it's complete trash? No. I do see baby steps in the right direction for certain things. Again, baby steps. Like I said, my mind is not made up on which way I'm going to vote on this yet. I'm still waiting on ratification meetings and whatnot. Be interesting to what we hear at Mid-States this next weekend. So, like I said, guys, do your research, do your homework, make your own choice on what you're going to vote. And the number one thing is please vote. When you get that ratification ballot in the mail, do not throw it away. For the price of a stamp, you're contributing. You're putting your vote in. That is the most minimal thing that you can do to be active. And that same goes for the delegate ballots. I know some states have already had some out. Majority of them are either just coming out or coming out soon. I know ours are coming out soon. Vote for your delegates. Do your research on those names that are on that list. Whether or not people get to publish something in their state papers. Or, another suggestion I've done in the past was, pull up a copy of the proceedings from the last national convention or the prior ones, and and see names and see the people that were at the microphone and speaking on your behalf, whether or not you think they were speaking for you or not, and choose your vote that way. Research people. Ask questions. Ask other people that may know who they are, if they know who they are. That's the most bare minimum thing that you can do to be active is to vote both on a ratification and your delegates for national convention. All it's going to cost you is the price of a stamp. So on that note, guys, be safe this week. And I know those that have impending spring weather, please be extra cautious. I wish temperatures were a little higher for me, but I will take 50s. It's better than 20s, zeros, below zero. I'll take it. But everybody stay safe this week. And James, next week, are you going to be home in time?
It should be. I mean, I believe it's only, what, 3-4 hours away?
Huh? It's 9.5 for me.
Oh,
Springfield, Illinois, south.
yeah.
Yeah, and actually I'm leaving from my parents' house Thursday morning, so it'll only be about a 5.5 hour drive. So I'm gonna put it. It's up in the air on whether or not we'll have something next Sunday. We'll let you guys know on the Facebook pages or whatnot if for sure. I can't guarantee I'll be back in time. So if not, maybe we'll do something in the middle of the week. We'll see what's going on with everybody. But on that note, guys, be safe there this week, and we'll talk with you next time.